I don't know, can you hear me? Now you're connected. Now it says it went through.
And good to connect with you.
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Let me just connect here.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, sorry for the disconnect with our Outlook thing. I don't know what's going on with Outlook. If you hadn't mentioned that.
In one hand, I would say I'm really technically proficient. In another hand, I'd say I fall very, very short. And I don't know. It always seems to work out somehow or another. I've never had anybody that was going to be a guest of mine provide a link. And then I was responding to these emails that said, if you want to use your own link, because I'm frankly not certain that I can record off of your link. I've never tried that.
Probably not.
Yeah. So it's, frankly, it's my content. So I want to record it and get it as soon as it comes down and all that.
100%.
And I'm totally willing to share it with you if you would like to have a copy of it too. That's not a big deal, but
yeah, sure. Because then we'll put it out on social media and put it out to our people and drive people to your podcast.
Yep. And I do a little bit of do some shorts. And she had asked Janet, I think it asked if we were going to do video and audio or audio only.
Right.
The Spiritual Underground podcast, this one, I actually have two podcasts. And since I've started to double, the Spiritual Underground podcast has always been primarily audio only. Since I've got the gear to do both, and plus Zoom allows for both. So I've kind of went both ways. I don't like to do a lot of small talk in the beginning because this podcast is about you. But I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about me so you got a little bit of a foundation. I don't know if I don't even know what people can find out about me. In 2014, I was breaking in houses, stealing pain pills, actually for about 10 years prior to that. But in 2014, I got caught. And I went down in front of a judge. Went in front of a judge here in New Albany, Indiana, where I live, which is basically a suburb of Louisville, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And the judge said the sentencing guidelines for the crimes you have committed is 6 to 20 years in the Indiana Department of Correction. And that got my attention. And also, you've heard this a million times probably. When the student is ready, the teacher appears, right?
Yeah.
And I landed in a 12-step meeting with a guy who is still my sponsor now, which is 10 years later. If I make it, we always say it that way. I will make it to January 1st, but we always leave that there for insurance. If I make it to January 1st, I will have been sober for 10 years. But
congratulations.
My revolutionized my whole life. And there's all kinds of speaker tapes out on the internet that I listen to feed my brain positive spiritual diet. And when I got my legs under me a little bit, I thought, I want to do that too. So that's why I started the Spiritual Underground podcast, was to these people out on the internet are like big circuit speakers, they're like listening to these. And I knew that the guy that lives down the street from me, story's just as powerful as the people on the circuit stuff. And so I started interviewing people in my local community. My men's home group is named Spiritual Underground. All AA groups have a name, registered name and number with central office in New York. And ours is the Spiritual Underground. Well, as I guess my podcast has gotten some traction, people are looking for that word spiritual, and they're bringing something to my plate that isn't really 12-step related. But in 12-step recovery, there's a couple of different concepts. One of them is I have to maintain my spiritual connection, my spiritual condition, and I have to continue to grow spiritually. And that's what people like you, in my estimation, and my listeners' estimation, bring to the table, because that ain't so easy to find. It actually is, but it's nice when somebody lays it in front of you.
Yeah.
So that's really this maintaining my spiritual connection, my spiritual condition and connection, and continue to grow spiritually is how you end up on my doorstep. I don't think you were looking for a 12-step recovery podcast when your person come, but it's perfect because what we both are a force for the good. That's as simple as I can put it. And we need as much of that as we can possibly have. And I have a blast sitting here meeting people.
Yeah, and
even though I never had an addiction problem in that regard, I did ask God to take my life about a half dozen times.
You're really muffled up.
Can you not hear me? I'm not clear.
It's really muffled.
Yeah. So I was,
and people won't listen if the audio isn't reasonably clear.
so I'm going to go to one of our recording. We'll do it there. I fixed my AirPods. I've seen better days, so
Yeah, I'm almost at the level that I can just barely hear what you're saying.
Hang on.
It may be that you just run it through the. Are you on a? Do you have a laptop or a phone?
I got a laptop, but that's not the problem.
It got better.
The problem is, I think my AirPods. Can you still hear me or no?
It's still really muffled.
Hang on 1 second. What we're going to do is I'm going to hop off the AirPods if you want me to answer.
Yeah, whatever you're saying now is completely garbled. That there was a hiss that just disappeared. You know, that there was a muffled sound that just disappeared when you took your earpods. I think that's what they're called. Earpods.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. And that's a lot better.
All right, good. Yeah, it's my AirPods. They're on the way out. So
yeah. I use the Beats brand ones that wrap around your ears, and they just have a limited lifetime, it seems like. And then my people I'm talking to on the phone can't hear me and they're having trouble, and I buy a brand new pair, and then everything's good for a while, and then I'll be getting guys tell me that they're having trouble hearing me.
what I was saying is I might not have an addiction background, but I did ask God to take my life about half dozen times. As a believer, I had already pastored for a number of years. So there's a commonality of despair and hardship and difficulty that I'm sure there are people listening who are going to be able to identify with that.
Because we've since redefined recovery. My sponsor and I offered the 12 steps to people here in Louisville, Kentucky. Anybody, you don't have to have an addiction, a gambling problem, or anything. If you want to use these tools, and our third step says, made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. And the first time I did that, didn't take either, for whatever reason. But I know it's my fault. It's not his. It's my heart wasn't really in it. I saw that you'd done that, and on the finally got access to the one sheet. Let me do a little bit of a welcome to the Spiritual Underground podcast. My name is Dan Reeves. I'm your host. If you're just bouncing along this podcast for the first time, it is primarily 12-step recovery-based podcast where people will tell their 12-step recovery journeys. But I also have been blessed with a lot of people that want to come share their spiritual awakening, and when I say spiritual awakening, can be religious, but doesn't have to be, because we all have a spirit, an essence, a soul, the thing that resides in us that wants to connect with a power greater than ourselves, at least in my opinion. And once we're able to make that connection, what I like to say is the skids started to be greased for me. Things just started working out. When I got my compass in true north in the direction of my spirit wanted to go, then all of a sudden these miracles started happening. So I love to have these guests on that have a similar story, because ultimately, really, all we have is our stories. That's what the Bible's full of. That's what all spiritual literature is full of, people's stories, and these stories are continuing to happen today. I have mine. my guest Mike has his, and there's some magic that happens when one person shares their spiritual journey with another, like gives that person permission to have theirs. It's a magical thing, and so I love to have people on that are bringing their particular, because everybody, we have a little thing in 12-step recovery. It says, if I could just help one person, right? If one person today hears Mike and I's conversation and they make a change in their life that ends up being better for them and their family and their kids and their parents, then we have done our job. And I have found that that happens every single time.
Mm.
How's it going, Mike?
It's going well. Dan, good to be with you. Everybody who's listening, watching, great to meet you. Honored to be on your podcast, and great work, man. 12-step recovery is one of the most significant deep dives that somebody can be involved in, because your back is against the wall. You have no place. You're at the bottom of the barrel, and you either go up or you go out. And lights out is not a good option. And I say that as somebody who I asked God to take my life probably about 6 times in the course of my life. And so I'm sure there are people listening who are at the bottom of the barrel or somewhere in between the top and the bottom of the barrel, trying to get their way to the top. And I hope that something that we say today, some of our dialogue, will encourage them and give them hope in what otherwise is a hopeless time.
Yeah, because it does it. I'm a big butt thumper. I love that book. Now, saying that, I draw from as much ancient spiritual teaching as I can possibly get my hands on. And I'm really not I don't have a single thing that I work from other than the big book. But they talk about in there that you can that we have to have this vital spiritual experience to recover from alcoholism and addiction. And it's at the same time easy to access and hard to access at the same time. The human condition doesn't want to relinquish, the ego doesn't want to relinquish power to this other power. And so we're all recovering from something.
Mm-hmm.
Recovery is to reclaim that which was lost or stolen. That's the way we define it. To reclaim that which was lost or stolen. And some of mine was stolen and some of it I gave away. And altogether, mostly it was my true self that got taken in that, and I've got it back today.
100%. You said something interesting in natural war and a battle. The army that surrenders loses. That's just warfare 101. You surrender, you wave the white flag, you lose. But when it comes to 12-step, or when it comes to, I think, moving forward with God, moving forward in your spiritual growth, you will not go forward until you surrender.
Yep.
You just won't. That's why in 12-step, you're the number one thing, you have to acknowledge your higher power. You have to acknowledge your helplessness and your hopelessness. And I know what it's like to be hopeless. And my hurt, my difficulty came as I was a pastor of a very large church in Pennsylvania, a church of about 1,000, 1,200. And we had a coup happen in that church.
Wow.
Where our entire family was kicked out and told not to return. And I had teenage sons that had done nothing. My wife had done nothing to merit that. But it was a very legalistic setup where women were not appreciated, were not honored. And I think fear can often be an operating modus operandi in a lot of religious circles. In fact, a lot of times in 12-step recovery, one of the things that you have to deal with is your fear, and recognizing what your fear is. Why is it that you're turning to the alcohol or the drug? And it might not be alcohol or drugs. It can be pornography. It can be food. There are all kinds of addictions. It can be electronic devices, right? An electronic device.
Ultimately, it's grabbing something from the outside to try to fill something on your inside.
Yes, 100%.
That doesn't work.
100%. And so for me, I realized that the same old recycled answers were not working. I think in many church circles, and I say this respectfully, but it needs to be said, the leaders are acting like parrots in echo chambers. If you put a parrot in an echo chamber, a parrot does not necessarily have a deep level of intelligence, but it has the capability to repeat what it has heard over and over again. So it doesn't understand the meaning behind the words. It simply repeats the words that it has heard over and over again. You put that parrot that can repeat words that are meaningless to it in an echo chamber, and it just reverberates all over the place till you can't hear anything else. When I was a kid, I had an Italian grandmother, Grandma Cupo, and she had 4 husbands. She had outlived every single one of them. And I remember very clearly, she only spoke Italian, a few words of English, but only typically, spoke Italian. And I remember she wore complete black because that was a tradition in a traditional Italian family. You would wear black when you were mourning. Now, she had 4 husbands that she outlived. And so she had a lot of mourning going on. She had 2 parakeets, and she was a very religious person. And she did the rosary all day long. And I remember sitting there at the dining room table while she was serving a meal. And I kid you not, Dan, I kid you not, as sure as we are talking with each other right now, and you're listening and watching right now, those parakeets began to recite the Our Father and the Hail Mary because they had heard my grandmother go through the rosary hundreds and hundreds of times. Now, those
Yep.
parakeets didn't know a thing that they were saying in terms of the content, but they knew how to repeat. They knew how to echo things back. And in a lot of church circles, we do things, we repeat things that we heard without really understanding the meaning. And we lose the most fundamental and the most crucial and significant, what it is supposed to all be about. It's supposed to be about loving God and loving people. And when you ostracize people, when you alienate people, when you excommunicate people, you refuse to talk to people, that is only for the most extreme cases. You better have a reason, like that person is an axe murderer or something like that, before you treat somebody like that. But it happens in religious circles. It happens when you are in the 12-step recovery process, that you got to face your fears. If you don't face your fears are going to do a number on you. And that's why we go to the food. That's why we go to the alcohol, the drugs, the pornography, the electronic devices, workaholism. That's a huge thing in our country, right? That's why we go to those things, because deep down there is a fear, and I'm going to volley back to you. There's a fear and there's a void that we are trying to fill with something that was not designed to effectively fill that void and deal with that fear and deal with that pain.
Yeah. Actually, a sponsor and I just did an episode on this the other night as we attempt to offer these tools to anybody that wants them. You're not pushed. We're not trying to, it's just toolbox. Hey, do you want to try it? And a big piece of the 12-step recovery is the inventory process, where you go look at what's going on. And a piece of the inventory process is a fear inventory. We actually put it down on black and white. We write it down, our fears, and address them and process them. Of course, males sponsor males mostly. And I've had opportunities to cross sponsor, and it brought some things to my life that were wonderful, where I got to sponsor some females through it, and they brought something to me that I didn't have before, and vice versa. But males are like, I don't have no fears. I ain't afraid of nothing, and then they have a 3, 4, 5-page fears list when you get them in when they're ready. When they're ready to address their stuff, they will be able to do that.
You're sick and tired of being sick and tired. When you reach your level of disgust where you're just, I had a weight problem a little while back, probably about 25 pounds overweight. And I had, through my life, I've lost thousands of pounds. No joke. I've lost thousands of pounds. I put them back on, right? And I remember my wife and my kids were away. They were visiting some friends out of state. And I was sitting on our couch in our living room, and I had lost weight, gained it back again. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. I was ready to give up, Dan. I was ready to accept that this was just going to be my way of life.
Mhm.
And then it hit me. I need to contact a natural weight loss expert, emphasizing natural because I didn't want to get into drugs, outside assistance. I needed to learn some things about weight loss and um, diet, meaning nutrition, that I didn't know. And when I did that, I did some research, found somebody who helped me understand how the body worked, understand how metabolism works, understand why I was turning to food, and then I was able to address it. Until we are willing to be honest with ourselves, many people are deceiving themselves into hardship, mediocrity, and bondage. We deceive ourselves because we're not willing to tell ourselves the truth. And the honest thing is that when we're not willing to tell ourselves the truth, we're making a decision for the long haul of difficulty.
Sure.
That's what the decision is. The sooner we get honest and deal with what we're really afraid of, what is really holding us back, that's the moment that our lives turn the corner. That's the way up from the bottom of the barrel.
One of my favorite lines on the Big Book. We stood at the turning point. We asked for his care and direction. And that's what you do in step 2, man. You're going to stand here and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to let go of the wheel, right? Because as long as I'm in control of the wheel, we're just going to keep driving down the same road we always drove down.
Mm.
I have to let go of that and allow another power to drive me in the direction that I'm supposed to be going. And it's way easier said than done.
Yeah, but it's freeing. It's freeing, once you take that step out and you realize that surrender is the way to victory.
It is surrender to win.
Yep. And you realize that that's where the power is. You'll never be more powerful or enabled in a good way. Enablement gets a bad rap, but enabled in a good way.
I
Then
like it.
when you have your higher power, I would refer to him as Jesus. He has a name. When you are fully dependent upon God, and I would say no one who truly surrenders to God will ever live to regret it.
Yeah. Nope. Nobody. One of the wonderful things about 12-step recovery is we encourage you to get in contact with the God of your understanding. And some people go to Christianity, and some people go to the religion of their childhood. But usually, in my estimation, while I watch, people are able to become. We go to Walmart, get some modeling clay, and this guy gets to make his own. And I now believe it's all the same God. We're all asking for this for help from the same higher power, from the same God. I use the word God mostly. And then I watch their life completely transform. It's like a right turn.
Right.
They don't think it'll work, and they tell me they don't think it'll work. And that one of my favorite saying is, do you believe that I believe it will work for you? And they go, you seem to be convinced it will work for me. Well, we'll go on my belief for now. And then sometime down the road, they're joking about that particular little statement about how their life is transformed and revolutionized, and they have a whole different way of doing this thing called life.
Well, to your point, I think there are certain things I had to realize for myself. There are certain things that are baked into our DNA. How the architect, I refer to God as the architect with capital A.
I like it. Yeah.
Architect at Cooper Union in New York. And there are certain things that are built into our DNA in regard to how we're made, how we're wired. And in Christian circles, I can only speak from Christian circles. I was raised Roman Catholic, accepted Christ, gave my life to Christ when I was a senior in high school. And then my journey was like a crock pot. Some people have a takeoff, a change, transformation like a microwave. For me, it was more like a crock pot, slow and steady. And sometimes it was like somebody unplugged it, that kind of thing and everything. But, God was never left my side. But there are certain things that are built into our DNA, certain ways that we're wired by the architect, that I realized the same old answers that we were giving people in Christian circles: read the Bible, pray more, read the Bible, pray more, read the Bible, pray more, and even surrender. You know, maybe we'll talk about this a little bit here too. Even surrender, I think these things need to be defined. They need to be explained a little bit more, because for me, with the nonsense, ungodly, terrible, unbiblical by any standard, any religion, of what happened to my family and me, forced me to go back to the drawing board. And that's when I began to do a deep dive into mindset and emotions. I remember the first few times when I asked God to take my life, I knew that taking my own life was not an answer. That would just create part of my history that I was then responsible for, and I would not be able to erase that. I would not be able to go back and change that. So I knew that suicide was not a solution. And if you're listening now and you think that's, you're contemplating suicide, all I can tell you is actually all that you really need to hear. Get help, ask for help. There are suicide hotlines. There are people who come alongside of you. There are many people who were in deep despair and at a point of hopelessness and helplessness, that did not choose suicide as the out, because it's not an out. But I felt that it was okay, since I couldn't take my own life, it would be okay if God took my life.
Yeah.
So I asked him about 6 times over the course of probably about 3 years to take my life. He obviously didn't, but he obviously did, because that's when I began to realize how we are wired. Whether you are a Buddhist, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Christian, whether you're an agnostic, whether you're an atheist, there are things that we know about how the mind and the brain work now that we never knew 20, 30, 10 years ago. We know more about how the human mind works now than at any other time in history, but you might as well be living in the dark ages if you don't know how to use your mind. And so that's when I began to realize that every emotion, unless you're dealing with a hormonal issue or a chemical imbalance issue, you're on a little substance, that you need to kick and join a 12-step program. Unless you're dealing with a hormonal issue or a chemical imbalance or a true psychosis, almost every emotion is the result. It's the byproduct. It is the fruit of the root, which is the thought behind it. Our thoughts are seeds. The thoughts create emotions. The emotions elicit deep feelings in us, which have everything to do with our choices. This is why we get into cycles of addiction, because thinking certain things, usually it has to deal with worthlessness, hopelessness. We feel deep agony, pain, loss, loneliness. We need something to make us feel better. So we go to a substance, we go to food.
Not being part of, not feeling like I fit in, somehow have a shortfall in my very being.
100%. I'm unloved. I'm unlovable. I am unchangeable, right? And so we seek to put a bomb, BALM, and what ends up happening is we BOMB our progress. So the thoughts create emotions, feelings, deep-seated feelings. They affect the choices that we make, the habits that we develop, and that creates our lifestyle. So I realized the hard way when I came to the end of my rope, why do I feel this way? What are the thoughts that have created these feelings? And I began to realize that I could actually use my emotions to my advantage. And in religious circles, many religious circles, we're not supposed to trust our feelings. Feelings are the enemy, faith over feelings. I would say until you trust your feelings to be honest with you, to lead you to the thought that created them, you will not make progress. I'm not saying that you should trust your feelings in that the feelings, I'm not saying that you should follow your feelings in the sense of be led by them, but you should follow your feelings in the sense of letting them honestly, in most cases, unless you're dealing with a hormonal or psychological or chemical imbalance, in most instances, your emotions will tell you the truth. They will be honest with you about what you have really been thinking. There's no such thing as an emotion that happens in a vacuum.
Right.
Your emotions are waving at you. They are a mirror reflecting back to you. They are saying, hey, look over here, pay attention. I'm trying to tell you something. And what they are trying to tell you is what's going on in the arena of your mind. In religious circles, we run in Christian circles, we always run to the Holy Spirit as the out. And I'm not down on the Holy Spirit. I'm not at all. What I'm saying is going back to the intrinsic point that we brought up earlier. There are certain things that are intrinsic to how we are designed by the architect, regardless of whether you are a religious person of any religion or of no religion at all. There are certain things you are fearfully and wonderfully made. I believe in intelligent design. And there are certain things baked into how we are designed that are universal to the human condition. And one of those things is your emotions are a fantastic built-in accountability tool to help you understand the truth.
It's a thermometer.
Of exactly of your thought life. And until you're willing to be honest with your emotions and get in touch with your emotions, you are actually trying to fight a battle without ammunition. Your emotions are one of the most significant God-given accountability tools built in. You didn't even ask for it, to help you determine what's going on in your thought life, because the battle is won or lost based on what you're thinking. Stinking thinking creates a rotten.
Stinking thinking. That's a term that's thrown around 12-step recovery quite often. And I'll just lay you another line that I love out of 12-step recovery. Fundamentally deep inside every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. And it will talk to you and it will give you messages. And if you can listen to it and follow its lead, then you can escape this, because life is hard. It is.
Yes, it is.
It can be hard. I really honestly think very few people escape this life thing easily. Me and you, we had to find a bottom, whatever that is. We had to come to a point to where we're going, hey, this is not working anymore. I need to do something different.
It's so painful. It's so painful. I'm sure for you, you're sober 10 years now. I mean, that point of right before the transition begins is hell on earth.
It is.
It's hell on earth.
Yep. Scared. I was so scared. And I was terribly sad. And at that point in time, I couldn't access those emotions because that wasn't available to me. I always say this too. I have a rock star dad. He's a great dude, man. He still lives with me now. He's upstairs right now, 87 years old, and he's a rock star. But it didn't matter. He trained me in a whole bunch of good ways, but still this, what we call spiritual sickness, because I do believe that I was born perfect and pure. And I got out into the world, and the world started putting boot prints on my spirit. And I didn't know how to handle that. And I was, for me, chemicals were the solution for that.
Yeah.
And and it actually worked good for a while. It really did. I'll be honest. But it quit working.
Yeah.
And things were really, really tough for a while, and I had to find a new solution. And our 11 step says, continue to improve our conscious contact with the God of our understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I was able to go through my inventory and deal with that, and then talk to another man in the 5th step and tell him this stuff, discharge this negative energy that had been built up in me, and then go out in 8 and 9 and talk to the people I'd harmed and cleaned up my side of the street and say, hey, I own this. I did it. I don't know what I can do to make it right. If there's something I can do to make it right, you let me know. If there's anything you want to say to me, I'm standing here willing to let you I'm willing to receive anything you have to say to me.
Yeah.
And then we get out in 10, 11, 12, and we're helping other people, because I think that's a I think that's a number one element of and I always worry about using this word successful life, fulfilled life. My life has to be founded on helping you. It has to be. As long as you used the word bondage earlier, and we say bondage to self. I was bonded to me. What can I do to make me feel better? What can I do to make me okay? What can I, and when I started spending my life's energy on helping you be okay, I got better.
Yeah, 100%. Again, the way forward is not, it's not a journey you take by yourself. When you give, there was a woman today, we swapped out our oven, our range. We did a renovation in our kitchen, swapped out the range, had a range that was about 10 months old, good condition, put it on Facebook for $350. This woman called up. Turns out she was elderly. She was 75. And I said, she didn't ask me about the price. She was willing to pay a full price. And she mentioned that she was 75 just in passing. And her range went out the day before cooking Christmas dinner.
Oh, wow.
And the oven went out. I said, you know what? I said, I'm not going to sell it to you for $350 though. Why don't I give it to you for $250? She flipped out. When she was hanging up the phone, apparently she was telling her husband, you know how when you're getting off the phone, you don't hang up yet and you're still talking. She yelled. She said, I can't believe it. She was so beside herself that I was willing to do that. That's not a testimony to me.
No, but that's when you're living in the realm, in the plane that you're living on, you're able to do that and sense that you have this opportunity to help this other human. And it'll come to you. You're not even thinking about it, right? You didn't give it consideration. There's no real thought. You went, oh,
what does it mean?
I'm gonna help this person.
One of the things that's universal in all religions is to love other people. The universal principle, the golden rule: love others the way you want to be loved. Right? It's really not that hard. We make it more difficult. And so, what I'm trying to do now, I'm not saying that I've arrived, but what I'm trying to do now more frequently is to simply ask the question: in this situation, what would blow me away if somebody did this for me in a good way? Can I do that with the person I'm talking to now, the person I'm interacting with now? I think that's as simple as it is. I think, again, in religious circles, we hide behind books. We can hide behind a religious book and study and study and study to the point of, ad nauseum, to the point where the main thing is no longer the main thing. And I think the main thing is to love God and love people. It's so simple. You do not need book after book and chapter after chapter to be able to put that principle into practice. Love your neighbor as yourself. Think about, how could I bless this person that I'm talking to? Let me put my needs, whatever they are, aside. That's part of what it means to trust our higher power, right? Let me trust that those will be met by the architect. In the meantime, let me be like the architect and be generous with this person and interact with this person.
I always joke around. I hear God talk to me all the time, and he taps me on the shoulder, but I don't feel it. But I walk and I go, okay, that's what you want me to do. Cool, I'll do this. And I have a little analogy where, like, little sticky notes. God drops little sticky notes and says, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And the podcast is one of them. And I work as a handyman around town. I have a wood shop in my backyard that I do custom woodwork, and I work in this community as a handyman fixing people's stuff. And it's a service position, really. I get to go to these people's house and fix their stuff, and they're happy that their stuff is fixed. And time after time, something will happen, and I have a thing where something my son's really been struggling with his drinking. And they will just offer that to me, you know? They don't know anything about me. And I go, look up. Okay. I happen to have some experience with that. If I could be of any help, you're free to give him my telephone number.
Mm.
And my favorite saying is the skids are greased. As I walk in this realm, everything just seems to go just as good as it could possibly go, and these opportunities fall at my feet.
Mm. Dan, what would you tell somebody who's watching right now who might be new to the podcast and dealing with an addiction, and they're listening to us or watching us, and they're saying, hey, what these guys are saying makes sense, but they have a big but, right? They have a big but, and the but
It
is
is a big bet.
I'm not ready to take my dive. Why would someone not be ready to take the dive into a 12-step program? What would be holding them back?
Yeah, we use a term of not ready all the time because people come to us asking for help, but they're just not ready.
Mm.
And I'll tell you another little line from the big book. No matter how far down the scale you have gone, you can see how your experience can help others. So you don't have to be at the bottom. You don't have to be under the overpass over on the highway. Uh, Wherever you're at, you can change your direction. And step one, I'm powerless over alcohol. It's not me. I cannot stop using whatever. I'm powerless over meth. I'm powerless over eating. I'm a powerless over gambling. I'm powerless over anything. And that acceptance that this has you, it's hijacked your operating system, really. Like we all have stuff in our computer today that keeps our computers from being hijacked by viruses. And that's exactly what happens to a guy like me. The operating system became hijacked. And the only way to clear that virus that's in me is to offer myself to another man, another human, and allow them to help me work through it. And it's hard. It is. But as you said, if you're sitting out there today and this stuff has got you and you know it, and if you're even questioning the fact that I wonder if I have a problem, if you're even questioning that fact you have, it's got you. And
Mm.
12-step recovery has helped more people than probably any self-help program in the world.
Oh, it's
It
amazing.
started about 1935,
Mhm.
and there's about 100 12-step fellowships using the tools that we offer over that time. And all you have to do is look in your phone, find a meeting, and walk in there and say, I need help. And I can promise you, if you do that, you will receive the help that you need.
Percent. And again, there's universally applicable, right? People in any language, any country around the world, the format, the steps are universal, and I think that's because of how we're wired.
Yep,
Right.
yep. There's some DNA in us. I like to say there's also a DNA that I believe that, like, men need to go out and kill the dinosaur and bring it home for dinner. Know what I mean?
Yep.
I've watched guys who have tried to become stay-at-home dads.
The dinosaur is also out there trying to kill a man and bring it home for dinner. But yeah,
Yep, it is. And I've watched guys try to be stay-at-home dads and it not work because of that dad needs to go out and drag some bacon home. He needs to. That's a fundamental thing in him. And whatever's going on with this addiction alcoholism thing, and it's been around since biblical days, right? Noah was a drinker, and other people in the Bible
Mhm.
were consumed by it. It's been around forever. So it's a virus that just is, like you said, in our DNA, and it wants to hijack us, and it doesn't get us all, but it gets some of us. And if it's got you, um,
100%.
I can guarantee you, this is like 100% guarantee. If you will come into 12-step recovery and you will work these steps and practice these principles in your daily life, you'll stay sober the rest of your life. And there's very few guaranteed in life overall. I can say that with at the depth of my heart.
Mm. Powerful.
A guy told me that when I arrived, and when he told me that, I was only guarantees are death and taxes. My alcoholic mind wanted to block and parry everything he had to offer me.
Mhm.
I've changed my mind. I've had a wonderful opportunity to sponsor a number of men, some 30, over 30 men through this program. And if they work it in 10 years, I have 30 guys, 33. I'm an engineer, so I keep track of numbers.
What
Uh,
kind of?
That's a whole different thing. When I was 19, 20, I got hired by a company over in Louisville, Kentucky named Henry Vogt Machine Company, and they hired me in as a drafter. And in 5 years, they promoted me to engineer. And I was in engineering school. And when they made me an engineer, I went, heck with school, right? Why do I need to do that? I am an engineer. And I worked there for 28 years.
Wow.
I worked there for 24 years as an alcoholic addict. I worked there for 4 years as a sober dude. And they pat me on the shoulder in March of 2019, said they didn't need me anymore. But again, and I'll bet you can reflect this too. Stuff happens in the rearview mirror, right? Something happens and you don't really understand why it's happening. But when you get by it a little bit, you can look in the rearview mirror and go, oh, I can see. And my heart wasn't really in it anymore. Now I'm self-employed and getting to help way more people in way different ways. And it ended up being a great thing that they laid me off.
Yeah. Yep. The greatest thing that didn't happen to you. It's awesome.
Yep. Same thing with the sentencing. What looked like would be the worst thing could ever happen to a guy like me turned out to be today the best thing could ever happen to a guy like me. It was my perception was skewed. And
Mhm.
today I look back on it, I was on home incarceration for a year. And back then, that seemed awful. As a matter of fact, it costs $100 a week to wear an ankle bracelet here.
They
That's
charge you.
$400 a month.
They charge you to pay for it.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Wow.
And my lawyer said, "Are you sure you can afford this?" And I'm thinking, I can't afford not to afford this. But uh, couldn't shut off my gas. I couldn't shut off my electric. I couldn't quit paying my electric, but I could turn off cable TV, and that was enough. And it was the best thing I've ever done.
Mm.
Not being attached to the spiritual poison that tends to come through that.
Mm.
Did you have a bottom? Did you have a place? Was it when they kicked you out of the church?
It wasn't right away because they really played it well. They wouldn't tell us what was going on. They were very secretive about what happened. We know that they had secret meetings. The bylaws of the church required that if there was anything that the senior pastor was accused of, they were required to inform him, and they were required to give him an opportunity to respond. They kept all that secretive. And the reason why they did is because I think they knew they didn't have a leg to stand on. But they played it really well in that they continually told us that we were going to talk, we were going to talk, we were going to talk. We tried 8 times over the course of 2 years, about 2 years, 3 years, to try to get together and talk with them. We said, bring anybody you want as a moderator. We'll bring 2 people. You bring anybody you want. They either said outright no, or they ignored our request.
Hmm.
hindsight's 2020. If I were to go back and do it over again, I just would have held press conferences on social media. I just would have said, hey, here's another attempt we made. It was rebuffed or it was ignored, right? And they were lying, telling people that they were making efforts. And I told the people who were being told that, I said, ask them for a letter. Have them show you a letter that they made an attempt. Have them show you a text message that they made an attempt. They can't do that because it doesn't exist. They're outright lying. They're outright lying to you by telling you that. That was the bottom. That was.
I hear these stories often enough that you know, I don't want to be down on religious organizations, but it's really hard not to be.
It is hard not to be. I don't think that the typical church today, and I say this respectfully, and it doesn't mean that there aren't ones that fall outside of this. There are, but the typical church today is nothing at all what Jesus envisioned when he hung on the cross. Nothing doesn't resemble it at all.
I agree.
The idea of loving God and loving your neighbor is spoken, just like Jesus said, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. But the practice of that is so encumbered with programs and building projects. I raised over $1 million for that church. And one day they came to me and they said, hey, we need to replace the lights in the auditorium. I said, well, how much is that going to cost? They said about $250,000. I came home to my wife that day. That was when I made the decision. I can't stay here anymore. I'm going to spend the rest of my life raising money for a building that really shouldn't have been built, in my opinion, shouldn't have been built in that location, shouldn't have been built that size. 2,000 seat auditorium, 140,000 square foot building. I mean, that's the size of a Walmart. Huge, right? I don't think it should have ever been done. And you think about human trafficking needs that are happening today. There's all kinds of legitimate, what I believe are legitimate needs where money can be focused toward those needs. There's all kinds of stuff that we hide behind, Dan. We hide behind these things, thinking that we're having an impact, the buildings and the programs, when it's actually very simple, and we cloud it. The simplicity is love God, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, how hard is it for me to get a comprehension of, I don't need to spend years studying what it means to treat other people the way I want to be treated. Be nice to them. You see somebody who has a need? What's the need? Do you have the capability of helping them in that need? Yes, I do. Then help them with that need. Do you not have the capability of helping them with that need? No, I don't. Then you're off the hook. It's really so simple that a child could understand it. And I think that's why Jesus said, unless you become a little child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. Unless you become like a little child, you can't enter a 12-step program. Until you realize your need, until you realize you can't do it on your own, you'll never move forward. Surrender is the way forward, right? It's our psyche, right. It's human nature that makes us think, no, if I surrender, I'm going to be embarrassed. People are going to look down at me. I'm going to lose my self-esteem. No, your self-esteem will get supercharged and replaced, and you'll move forward like never before. Again, surrender in natural warfare guarantees defeat. Surrender in spiritual warfare, surrender to your higher power, whatever religion you are, always moves you forward. It's the way forward.
It does. That is a spiritual law.
Yep.
No two ways about it.
It's universal.
We're fortunate in that we have a homeless outreach program here in Louisville, Kentucky, which a lot of my guys that I work with, my sponsees, who have latched on to, and I've watched that grow them. They are looking for service work. That step 12 says, carry this message to other alcoholics and also anybody else. Help people. It's really what, if I could wrap up
help people.
Step 12 in one thing, it's help other people. And I watch these guys that I work with go down, and I just cleaned my closet out not long ago to give them a bunch of clothes that I don't really need, but those people in here around here are freezing, man. They're cold.
Yeah.
And to
Yep.
watch that service element of life of helping God's other children
Yep.
and watching the karmic payback of doing that.
Yep.
It's magical.
It is magical. The other day I went to a gas station. This homeless guy was there. It's the time of year when it's cold outside, people are especially needy and stuff. And I knew he was going to ask me for money. So he asked me for money. I said, would you like something to eat? He said, yeah, I would. I said, come on inside. So he picked out a chicken biscuit. He only took one because he didn't have very high self-esteem. I think was struggling with, as many of us do, a poverty mentality.
Yep.
People want to demonize a prosperity mentality. Poverty mentality is super wicked, super evil, super bad. He only wanted to take one, very sheepishly took one. I said, would you like another one? He goes, oh, can I have another one? I said, yeah, take another one. I said, you want something to drink? He said, yeah, I would love something to drink. So I had him pick out what he wanted to drink. And he's blown away. Again, this is not a testimony. This has nothing to do with me. It has to do with you who are watching and listening. Love your neighbor as yourself. When you see somebody in need, what is it that they need? Are you capable of helping them with that need? Well, but no. Are you capable of helping them with that need? It's not complicated. If the answer is yes, then help them with that need. Treat somebody else the way you want to be treated. It's not that difficult. We hide behind, like you said, I see this all the time in religious circles. It especially happens in the fundamentalist circles. It's Father, Son, and Holy Bible. And I'm all for reading the Bible. But I am more for putting the Bible that we read into action. We can use the Bible as an excuse for taking action. Jesus said this to the Pharisees. He said, you diligently study the scriptures, thinking that by them you possess eternal life. And here he was, the Messiah, standing right in front of them. They refused to acknowledge him, refused to accept him, refused to present him to the nation of Israel, but they were all about quoting their scriptures and making their disciples.
Yeah.
I would say to you who are watching right now and listening right now, do not complicate the marching orders in life. The main thing of that life is about, which is to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. All you need to do is think about, how would you like to be loved? And start doing that to other people without expecting anything in return. Selflessly.
That's it.
All you need to do is get in touch with, how would I like to be loved? Do that for somebody else without expecting anything in return, because your reward is simply knowing that you help somebody. And that's how you love other people. That's the golden rule. It is not complicated. You do not need to spend 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 decades of your life on this blue marble we call Earth to finally understand what it's about. It is about loving God and loving people. And anybody who makes it more complicated than that, or tries to make you think that it's a complicated thing to do, is deceiving themselves and other people along the way. And I would go so far as to say this. I think many churches, and I can say this from a Christian perspective because I come from one. I come from a Christian background, right? I pastored for almost 20 years, was involved in pastoral ministry. I think the dog and pony show of what's happening on most Sunday mornings, it's great to get together and to hear a word, to sing songs of worship. But I think in many instances, it's smoke and mirrors to make an excuse for not getting serious. I do.
Yep. What are you really doing? What are you really doing? What are you getting up off your chair and helping God's children be better? Yeah.
100%.
That I fell into in 2005. I got 6 months sobriety by joining the church. and I joined the men's group who repaired cars for women who weren't, you know, and I did a lot of things and it worked for me. I signed up to pass out the communion and I did all that. Uh, but didn't have staying power for a guy like me. Uh, it was later on when I actually started helping, like, behind the scenes is what AA is. You're nobody's watching you.
Right.
Uh, you're behind the scenes and you get to offer a guy a chance to pull his
Mhm.
this virus up out of the unknown and get to having a life.
Most of the significant, important, mission critical lessons in life can be understood by a child.
Yep, yep, no doubt.
And
And
one of,
we aim for being back at childhood.
yeah,
That is a thing we do in our 12-step program. We find that little kid picture back when we were young and the lights were on in our eyes and we were just a wonderful little child.
yep.
And we aim, that is what we're heading for. That's what we want to achieve through doing this work.
And, you know, honesty, right? I say it again. Many people have deceived themselves into bondage and mediocrity and ending up living a life that's far below what they're capable of living. Transparency, honesty. You know, we demand honesty from other people, but we don't demand it from ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Transformation starts when we're willing to get fed up with where we are, realize that we need to change, and get, you know, I was going to say brutally. I don't know if that's the right word because it has such a violent connotation. Get
Yeah, right.
totally honest and transparent and take 100% ownership for the decisions that we've made, for the choices that we've made. Because if the choices that we made got us where we are, then the choices we make can get us where we want to go. It really is true. And again, it's I think re-examining what it means to surrender. To surrender doesn't mean that I lose my ability to choose. Not at all. Surrender means that you're making choices that move you forward. That's what that means.
Amen. Yep. You know, done a little bit of Joseph Campbell digging, and he talks about, you know, the hero's journey and that we're going to have to go through our hardship, right? We're going to have to fight the dragon. We're going to have to go through the thing. And our job in life is actually to do that and defeat the dragon,
Mm,
come around and help other people understand how to defeat the dragon. And it makes a lot of sense to me that
dragon.
I just don't, you know, I don't see a lot of people get to skate through life unscathed. Something happens, some kind of trauma, some kind of hardship, some kind of something tends to get you, bring you down.
Yep.
And your job is to rise above that. And my job is, if I'm in your kind of realm, my job is to grab you up and help you rise above that.
Mhm.
Um,
100%.
a hero's journey. I don't know anybody really that gets to escape unscathed. Something happens with everybody.
It happens. Something happens. And then, you know, in the same way that what happened to us made us go back to the drawing board, made us really evaluate our worldview. Everybody has a worldview. The way you see the world is what determines how you interact with the world. And either something happens that makes you bail. Some people take their lives. Some people go deeper into addiction. Some people start with addiction. Some people have affairs. You know, there's all kinds of, you know, that's why Jesus said, broad is the way that leads to destruction, narrow is the way that leads to life. But um, the crisis can be your turning point. The crisis, the difficulty, the hardship can be the very thing that you needed, even though we don't want to hear that. The very thing that you needed to purify what's going on in your life. We boil water to get the impurities out of it, right? We get a fire to a really hot temperature in order to melt metal, in order to melt gold and get the impurities out of it. And then what you have left is just pure 24 karat gold, one of the most prized elements on earth, in the universe, right? 24 karat pure gold. It just sounds amazing just to say that, doesn't it? But the amount of heat that it took to get to that point, the ability to distill water and what's involved in that process, the heating process, it's no different. Again, universal laws, the difficulties, the hardships, like you're saying, something happens to us living outside of Eden, something happens to us living in this fallen world that toasts us, makes us crispy. And then how we respond to that is what determines what happens next.
Yep.
The next
That's it. And again, I just seen that's the cycle of life sometimes. Again, there's some people out there that don't have to experience what me and you did, but I want to normalize the fact that you are probably out there struggling with something, and there is a way out, and you can circle back around and transform from what seems like this um, hopeless situation that
Absolutely.
you just have no idea how to get out of. There actually is a way to get out of that. Bill Wilson in the book says, the hopeless, seemingly, now I like that word. He says, seemingly hopeless condition of alcohol and alcoholism. It just seems like it's hopeless. It's not really. You can come around and come out of that.
Listen, if there's one person who was in a quote unquote hopeless situation, whose life was turned around, right? Whether you want to say they turned their life around, or God turned their life around, the higher power turned their life around, or they're an atheist and they say, well, they just made decisions and they turned their life around, whatever the case might be. The point is, if we can find one person whose life turned around, then there's hope for you. And no matter how difficult, no matter how hard it is, I often tell myself this, Mike, there are people who have gone through and are going through situations and difficulties far worse than you. They bounced back from it. They lived to tell about it. They became a different person in great ways. They discovered their true self. They were refined. They were purified. They came out the other side better for it. Dan, if we can find one person that's true for, and there actually are thousands of people.
Amen.
Situation.
Yeah.
And then there's hope for you. There's hope. You're watching, you're listening right now. You might think it's hopeless. Listen, there are thousands upon thousands of people over hundreds of years since the beginning of civilization who thought that their situation was hopeless. They felt like they were helpless and powerless, and their life changed. You are one decision away from a new life. And the decision, I think, Dan, you and I would agree on this 100%. I think the decision is to make the decision. I'm going to take the plunge.
Yeah, that's it, brother.
The plunge.
Yeah. Yep. And I'll tell you, I am here and Mike is here, and we will help walk you through that process if you want to. It's my life's mission today is that I found a purpose in life. It's another essential thing. I believe that I didn't know it when I got sober, but today my purpose in life is to help other people figure their way through this thing. And that's what I go handyman and woodwork and do all this. But honestly, my true life's purpose is to help other people figure their way through that tough spot. And that's why I do this podcast, because I bring on people like Mike, and his true purpose is also to help you through that tough spot.
100%.
And you can do it. And you can be the mom, the dad, the son, the daughter, that you were meant to be on this planet.
Yes, you can. There's hope for you. There's hope for you. And maybe some of the difficulty and the hardship is because you need to step into new territory that you haven't stepped into. One of the best
Yeah.
decisions I made, and a lot of people don't understand, one of the best decisions I made was to leave the pastorate, because I felt the four walls of the church, especially the church where I was at, which I felt was very legalistic, very fundamentalist. They had that in their DNA, very critical, very judgmental. And when certain things are in the DNA, you can't extract those from the DNA. They're baked into it. They're baked in, right? And I can say that because the founding pastor was going to people's houses and telling people not to support me. The founding pastor was doing that. Him and his son and his wife were going to people's houses telling them not to support us. There's just no way to say it. That's just sick. That's sick and that's twisted. One of the best things I did was get outside of the religious institution, the walls of the man-made American church, right? That we think is so spiritual. It's spiritual, all right, but in a diabolical way, I believe. Much of it. I believe much of it, right?
I agree too, man. I agree.
But Jesus is a different story. Jesus is the real deal. He's the purity. He's the 24 karat gold, right? And he's the one that we should be striving for. One of the best decisions I made was to get outside of the walls of the church. You know why I made that decision? Because of the crisis, the difficulty, and the hardship. And maybe you are listening and watching right now, and you have been trying to make something work. You've been stuck in a rut, and you can't get out because maybe you shouldn't be there in the first place. Here's what I mean. When I took a trip across the country to the Oregon Trail, I could see the end of the Oregon Trail when I got to the border of Oregon, and there's this visitor center there. And you could stand at the top of that visitor center, and you could look down into the valley, and you could literally see the wagon ruts at the end of the Oregon Trail. Now we're talking about, this was in the 1990s. I saw that 1990s.
Yeah, but that's 100 years earlier, really, right?
Yeah, these wagon ruts were still there. You know, they buried people on the Oregon Trail between the wagon ruts because you know they wouldn't. Then that way animals and stuff wouldn't be able to dig them up and everything. You could still see those wagon ruts because there was so much traffic that had gone through. You know, you can get to the point in life where the same old things that you've done over and over again, the same old patterns and circumstances have developed such deep ruts in your life that you can't get out of them. And the crisis sometimes is exactly what happens to get you to push a little bit harder in a different direction. Maybe
Great.
The crisis that happened to you in your life that you're going through right now in your life is for the very purpose of you to question what you up to this point have not been willing to question.
No doubt. Great thing about a rut is somebody has been there before.
Okay. Great point. Great point. Many people have been.
Many people. Yeah. And they made it out because they're not stuck there. And yeah.
Good stuff.
Life is a funny thing, man. It really is. And we do this trudging through it and get into these patterns that our parents and our family system gets us in those ruts.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, for most of us, those ruts don't work for us anymore. And I always say that 50 miles into the woods, I got to walk 50 miles back out.
We stay in the rut because we're afraid. We're afraid.
We're afraid.
And we're told, don't take a risk. Don't take a risk. I think it's one of the best things that could happen to a person when they get to a point where their back is against the wall, because then the only way to get out is forward, right? It's the only way.
Yes.
So,
bump up out of those ruts.
Get you out of those ruts. Sometimes that crisis, the difficulty, the hardship, the disgust, it's your friend. It's not your foe. It came your way to get you out, because maybe you shouldn't be where you have been in the first place. That's true for me.
I've been so blessed to have people like you bring these lessons and these thoughts to me. It's just since I changed my compass needle into my true north, I get to meet guys like you who are a force for the good and can bring some food for thought, be able to give people permission to think differently. Because that's what we get. We get rutted in, and we can't break these old thought patterns.
Right.
And
We
and there's
think
people like you that are out there willing to help you break these old thought patterns so that you can, you know, jump out of that rut
Mhm.
and have a different kind of life.
Just
Appreciate you for being able to do that. And I don't know. I
thanks for having me on.
I'm I don't have words to express the fact that this little podcast I do gets me in contact with guys like you who can bring this new thought to me. And it helps me, right? Because I'm not there. I don't claim to be some kind of guru that knows what to do. And you bring new food to my spiritual life. And and you bring food to my listeners' spiritual life uh, that we haven't heard before because I really this is new stuff to me.
It's a pleasure, man. Pleasure to be with you. Pleasure to be guest and sit down and talk with you as a viewer, a listener. Hopefully, give you some encouragement. I'd love to hear from you if you want to email me or you want me to tell them how to contact me at all.
Go ahead. And I'll also put stuff in the show notes. I got all your information, but you can go ahead and wrap it off if you want.
Yeah, just couragematters.com. I'm on social media and YouTube, Michael Anthony Official. Michael Anthony Official. You'll find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. If you just type in
Courage does matter. Courage
courage,
matters.
that's Maya Angelou said that courage is the most important of all virtues because without courage, you can't practice any of the other virtues. I saw her many, many years ago when I was in college, before she was really well known. There were probably 30 people that went to see her. Now, she went on to be just a blockbuster powerhouse of a woman, activist in a great sense of the word, author, um, just unbelievable woman. And if I knew back then who, 30 people, I went up and talked to her and everything is amazing. But she made a very good observation that courage is the most important of all virtues because without courage, you cannot practice any of the other virtues. So our website is couragematters.com, not because of Maya Angelou, even though I admire her a great deal. I just, many years ago bought the domain name, thought someday it would come in handy. And then after all I've gone through, my wife's gone through, our kids have gone through, here we are. So trying to help people develop courage as their new way of life. So great to
Yeah,
be
and
with
you got some journals and you got some other tools that help people
you.
to
I do. We've got a self-mastery journal for men, prayer journals for men and women, and a brand new best life planner. Now, the way to find those, you just go to Amazon and you type in prayer journal Michael Anthony or self mastery journal Michael Anthony or best life planner Michael Anthony. Just type that in and they'll pop up and you'll be able to see them.
yeah, man.
And they're all designed to do the very thing that we've been talking about because it's one thing to have a conversation as meaningful and as deep and as impactful a conversation can be when you have a journal that reminds you of those same things again and again every day, week after week, with inspirational quotes, lessons that you can enjoy. And they all come with videos too, to train and to teach. That's how you sustain, right? Like that's why you do your podcast. You do it week after week, month after month, year after year, because there's a value in that steady drip. That's why we created the journal. So you just type in prayer journal, Michael Anthony, self-mastery journal, Michael Anthony, best life planner, Michael Anthony, and they'll all pop up.
Yeah, I really encourage everybody to look into them. I'll be honest, that has been an area where I have struggled with journaling. I coach it to my guys. I get to sponsor guys and I tell them, you should journal, but this guy here doesn't do it. And, um, you know, Carl Jung synchronicity stuff where I keep on hearing the same message time after time after time. I have learned that in recovery, when I keep on hearing a message to me over and over and over again, I should probably pay attention.
You should. You need to get a journal.
All right, Mike. Love you, brother. Love what you're doing. And again, force for the good. This man is out here trying to help people.
Hey,
And
do me a
that
favor.
is the bottom line of what we're asked to do by, I think, our higher power. Help other people.
Do me a favor and shoot me an email with your mailing address, and we will mail you a journal. Let us know which one you want, and we'll mail you.
Okay.
Happy to do it.
I'll do that.
And it's been awesome to be on your podcast. Thanks for being such a great host and having such great content. I really mean it. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah. And thank you again. The only words that come to me is that I just love bumping into other people, men and women, who are a force for the good in this world, who are helping to make this place a better place to live. And I fully believe that the light will win over the dark. And with me and Mike doing the stuff we're doing, I believe that will happen.
Absolutely.
If you're not having a blast in your recovery, you're not doing something right. And thank you for allowing Mike and me to participate in our recoveries in this manner today. Peace out. Thanks, brother. It's fun.
Thank you. When are you going to put it out?
This will be out the Sunday after next.
Yeah,
I'll
maybe.
I'll send you links and stuff, and I'll
Yeah.
shoot out some shorts on YouTube too, which I'll copy you on. And
Awesome. Yeah, and I mean it. Shoot me your mailing address, and we'll get you whichever one you want. I don't know if you have the prayer journal for men or the self mastery journal for men.
I've just never been any good at it, you know, and I know it's something that is good for me.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I understand.
Maybe you're the key.
Glad to help you, man. Happy New Year.
All right. Yeah. Happy New Year to you. It's great talking to you tonight.
Likewise, Dan. God bless you.
Bye-bye.